Welcome back to The Long Shortcut, the podcast where two startup enthusiasts, Owen and myself, James, talk about what it really takes to build something from scratch.
Yes, and this week we're tackling a big one, the ideas. The kind that you scribble in a napkin, you obsess over in the shower, well, some of us might do that, or you pitch it to your mate over a pint, which I may have done a few times.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I've had a million billion-dollar ideas, but I'm sure you have as well. Most of them, I would say all of them, no, most of them have gone nowhere. I think, if I look back on reflection, most of them have gone nowhere because in reality, ideas are cheap.
They certainly are. So today we'll be digging into what separates an idea from the real opportunities. Is it timing? Maybe it's the founder fit. Maybe it's execution, the ability to actually deliver it. Or maybe it just requires some pure outright stubbornness.
Yeah, I'm certainly known for that. So if you've got 10 domain names parts, or you've just got one crazy thought that just won't go away, then this episode is for you.
Let's get into it.
So it looks like your background is a slight bit different than it normally is. What's going on?
Any guesses as to where I might be?
Iceland.
Well, no, it's a bit hotter than Iceland. Given the fact that my watch topped out at 44 degrees Celsius yesterday.
Oh,
And
no.
in my wisdom, I decided that's just about the weather to go for a quad biking in the desert, in the outskirts of Dubai.
Yeah, very, very nice. It could be like a landscape backdrop. It's just a bit of a stereotypical Dubai. I mean, you might still be in your normal house, just with a
I can assure you,
with
I'm
a
not.
very good painting.
Yeah, no, that is the Dubai Marina.
Very nice.
Just if you can see it? Let me see. Can you see? No, you can't. Through the gap, just over there is the JBR beach.
Oh, okay, right. Oh, okay. Well, I mean, for the listeners and viewers, I'm still in Eindhoven, and it rained this morning, so everything is normal, which is great.
Is
Okay,
everything as normal? Did you expect
yeah.
it with the rain?
Well, yeah, it's Netherlands. So ideas are cheap, right? Ideas are cheap. You and I have been talking for a long time about obviously building businesses and what makes a good business and that kind of thing. And so many times we keep hitting on that same phrase of, oh, I had a great idea too. And we were both talking a few weeks ago about the idea that, well, so what if you've got a great idea? Actually turning an idea, good or bad, into a business is probably harder than the actual idea itself or coming up with the idea. So I guess to you, and I'll give my opinion afterwards, why do you think that most ideas go nowhere?
There is no one single answer to that. But, just as you say, the ideas are cheap. One of the lessons that I took away from a startup incubation program that I was part of many years ago, as a founder or somebody that's got a great idea, I wanted to share it with people, but I felt, hang on, if I'm going to share my idea, maybe I need an NDA in place, a non-disclosure agreement. And, this was the thing. And it was one of the mentors in this program said, yeah, you can get an NDA in place, but, the reality is it's not about the idea. It's about who's going to be able to take that idea and do something with it. Who's going to be able to turn it into that real opportunity. If you can do it, brilliant, drive on. If you can't do it, so what? Well, about the NDA. So, it's about that ability to execute. So we're looking at everything from, the timing of the idea. Is it the right time for that particular idea? Are you the right fit to be able to turn that idea into a reality? Maybe you don't have the experience today. Maybe the market's not ready for it. So timing is a huge part of it. The market resources. I developed a business many years ago called My Store Analytics, and at the time it was it was quite innovative. We were sort of re-engineering the Wi-Fi signal that was being picked up by Wi-Fi routers in retail spaces, and they were listening to the MAC addresses coming off everybody's phone, so we could then identify who was passing the shop front, who was coming into the store, how long they were staying. Really good information. But at the time, it purely delivered a insightful information to the retail owner. There was no actionable insight that they could do with it, you know. So, but today, with all of the advent of AI and, you know, sort of projections that can be built into all of this metrics, today that would be a really good idea. But back then, it was an idea that couldn't really scale or couldn't really deliver anything. So it never really went anywhere in the end. So there's so many different reasons that a business can move from an idea forward. So many more reasons why it won't work.
Thing is, we've all got that friend who, in the pub or the bar or whatever, will say, "Oh, I had a great idea for XYZ," or I would say the worst kind. "Oh, I had that idea. That was my idea." You know, when they see something that's taken off and someone says, "Oh yeah, that was my idea." I think so what, you know. I think scribbling down the idea, like, it's great to identify the gap in the market, the niche, whatever that might be, but assembling the team, that's a business amongst, you know, by itself. I think on my side, I've had a number of good ideas. At least I'd like to think so. $1 billion ideas. Being the tech guy, generally, my role is to build the thing, build the idea, and a number of times, quite often, it's happened 2 or 3 times in the past, where the idea hasn't sold. Now, I'm not saying it's the other founder's responsibility or problem or whatever, but building the thing is one step beyond, "Oh, I have an idea." Then you've got to build out the idea, but then you've got to sell the idea. And just because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean that somebody's willing to part with their hard-earned money to buy into your idea. And I think there's a ton of those, of, you know, why most ideas go nowhere. You know, there's a spectrum, isn't there? There's the idea doesn't go nowhere because you just didn't do anything with it. Or maybe it didn't go anywhere because you tried to get an investor and you couldn't quite get them hooked, or whatever reason. Or you built an MVP and then it didn't quite work. Or, you know, you've then got maybe the wrong founders on board, or market conditions, or, you know, there's so many things that I don't want to call them good luck, because I'd like to think that's hard work. But there's so many places along the way where, when you see, let's say, you know, Revolut, the bank, have just been in the news lately for doing really well and being very well valued. They were turned down at Y Combinator 10 years ago or wherever. They couldn't get traction off the ground. Internet banking, challenger bank, great idea. How many people had an idea for a challenger bank that didn't in fact go anywhere? Those guys for oh, go on. I think we have to hear this one.
So, yes, I was one of those guys. So, you know, we're going back maybe 10, 12 years, something like that. And, you know, I took a bit of time to look at what was my next direction going to be. I'd just finished up with the shoe distribution business. I'd sold that off and was looking for the next direction. And I did a bit of research, and banking was one of the ones that I zoned in on. And, you know, thought, this is a really good market. The market is ready for a challenger bank. The consumers are ready for a challenger bank. I most definitely have the drive and passion to take this idea forward. But nobody would invest in me. I had zero experience in banking, except I loved the idea that I could say, you know, what do you do? Well, I own a bank. All right, that was my primary motivator, but I lacked any capability to take that idea forward, so I ended up, not even pursuing it, bar a half scribbled out business plan, which anybody looking at it would have rejected it in the first first view.
I wonder if you've still got that. Like, it'd be nice to look back at that and see, because having built businesses, I know we both have, what you think you need in a business plan, and then what you actually need to make a business successful. I think those are totally different things, right? So
Yeah, probably. I do. I know I definitely have the financial forecasting for it,
yeah,
because I did that as part of my one of MBA financial models, as part of the case study for that. So yeah, it definitely have the financials. It was going to make a lot of money, but I was going to become very rich from it.
of course it
So,
was.
but hey, nobody wanted to invest
Well,
in
I
it.
mean, I don't think any self-respecting idea is complete without the hockey stick curve. The numbers going up in one direction only.
Yeah,
At extremely high velocity. Now,
yeah.
before we move on to the next segment, I think we've talked about ideas that back of a napkin ideas going up all the way to building it but didn't sell, but there's, I think, a number of common traps that where somebody says, "Oh, I've got a great idea," to taking it to actually a business that is profitable, makes money, and you can exit. A number of traps I think that people fall into. The NDA one is, I think, an interesting one. That's not actually written in these show notes, but you mentioned it, and I think that's something that's good. I think people being too protective of an idea is possibly a trap. I think because there's that fear of, oh, somebody will steal my idea. But if you go in with the attitude that the idea itself is cheap, then the stealing, what you're stealing has very little value. We're all familiar with the concept of the moat. The moat is, how do you defend your idea? And, let's take, for example, I don't know, this is a crazy example. Google's moat is, there's a number of companies out there with search engine. Google's moat is they have 90 something % of the market. So for somebody to come out with a better Google, okay, that could happen, but they have to get over the fact that somebody, Google, already has such a huge market share. So the idea of the NDA to protect an idea, if your NDA is your moat, you don't really have a moat.
No.
And I guess that's one example. Another one that we've written down here is perfectionism. How would you say, or how would you describe perfectionism as a trap for why an idea doesn't go anywhere?
So I suppose it has me thinking about, maybe it's more rigid thinking. And, as we're talking through this, I hadn't thought about it beforehand, but, if we think back to the information we have on Netflix as a business, as a startup, they started off with a very different type of business.
Oh, yeah.
And many startup founders would still be stuck in that idea that their business is mailing out DVDs to their customers. And they would do everything to make sure that that is done absolutely right, and they will continue to do it until nobody wants to rent those DVDs any longer. And I suppose there's that risk there that you perfect the wrong idea, right? You're too fixed on it that the ability to pivot as the market or your customers are directing you would ultimately lead to the idea not moving forward. So, it is very important for any startup founder, as they're looking at their idea, that might not be the long-term idea. That might just be the seed that you need to plant to let it germinate to find out what your actual idea is. And it might
Okay,
take
but
6 months of building something.
how do you though contrast that with another trap that good ideas have, which is being distracted by the new shiny thing? What you're saying is, on one hand, you're saying you need to pivot, and I do agree with you. If you can clearly see that the market that you thought was there isn't going to be there, rather than just throwing away investor money or your money or whatever, you may as well, yes, pivot. But then there's the other extreme of chasing the shiny new object. So how do you kind of rationalize both the agility of being able to pivot and not getting distracted by a shiny object?
There is no magic answer to this. It is the age-old problem. And, I'm often sort of challenged by this thinking of the startups that succeed are the ones that persevere the longest.
Yeah.
But you also got to bear in mind that, sometimes it's right to pull the plug on your idea. So again, it's that, do you pivot or do you go out, and go after the new shiny thing, or do you stick with what you've got because it's nearly ready to launch into the stratosphere? I think a lot of this is what we're talking about. It's how do you take an idea into a real business? You've got all of these traps that you've got to navigate. Maybe the Reed Hastings in the Netflix scenario, maybe he did stick with the mailing DVDs for a bit longer, and he went in a completely different direction, and he could have a very successful business doing something completely different to what we know Netflix is today, but he could still have been a success. So I think it's looking at what the cards are that you have in front of you, and reading them as best you can.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think we can comfortably say, well, why ideas sometimes go nowhere. But one thing that can sometimes inhibit an idea is your choice of co-founder. Now, some people who are listening to this are going to say, I don't need a co-founder. What I'm going to say as somebody who's built several businesses is you cannot do it all yourself.
No.
I think it's very easy to think, oh, I know business, I know tech, I know marketing, sales, all that. The phrase "jack of all trades, master of none," I think when it comes to running a business is absolutely true. And sitting where I'm sitting now, I am much more comfortable knowing that I don't know it all than the idea in the past of thinking, oh yeah, I'll be able to figure that out, or fake it till you make it, or whatever else. So on the subject of the idea that you have, do you choose the co-founders, or does the idea choose the co-founders?
So interesting, and I love the phrase there. You said completely side topic here, but sitting where I am today, and I'm thinking was, I can think of nowhere nicer to be sitting than the warmth of Dubai. So sitting where I am today.
Yeah. We all get the point. Yes, I know.
Do you want me to rub it in a bit more? Is it still raining in Eindhoven?
The sky looks a little bit of a slightly different color to where you are.
Yeah. So does an idea find a founder, or does a founder find an idea? It could be a bit of both. More often than not, it's one or the other. If I think back to that time where I thought I wanted to own a bank, I went in and researched the direction I wanted to do it. I looked for industries that were ripe for disruption. And at the time, banking was definitely one of them.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, Irish whiskey distilling was another one that was ripe for challengers to come in. At the time, there was really only 3 distilleries in Ireland. Yet you look at a similar market in Scotland, there was something like 200 independent distilleries. So I had my thinking cap on. I think, right, I'm going to start a whiskey brand,
Mm.
right? And I even got to the point of speaking to Middleton Distillery about would they work with me to create a my own blended Irish whiskey, and they were absolutely willing to help me out. Of course, for a fee, and it wasn't a small fee. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm counting the pennies and checking under the sofa to, only to realise I did not have anywhere near enough to finance a craft whiskey business in Ireland. And while I did speak to a few other investors, I did reach out to a few people that may be interested in being co-founders with me,
Mm.
uh, but did not. It didn't materialize. It didn't go anywhere. So I ended up parking any of those ideas that I had been looking for at the time. But at the same time, I could quite easily have one of those could have germinated into an actual business, and therefore I would have found the idea. I think more often than not, it's the ideas find the founders. But the important piece is that the founders have their eyes open and are open to the idea that comes along and slaps them in the face and says, I'm the next $1 billion idea.
Mm.
You know, all too often, these people that say to you, well, I had that idea first. You know, well, that idea slapped them around the face a number of times, and they went, no, I don't know, I don't have anything to do with it. So they left that cheap idea alone.
Yeah, no, of course. I think that, I mean, whiskey is obviously not a tech um, idea, um, but you and I certainly have the most experience when it comes to tech companies. As the technical founder, not normally, always. My challenge is finding the business people, and how do you go and do that? How do you find? I mean, we've all met people who swear blindly that, oh yeah, they can raise lots and lots of money to a business, and then when it actually comes to it, yeah, it doesn't quite work out. On your side, and that's generally the experience that I have or have had. On your side, when it comes to finding a tech founder to build a thing, what's been your experience on that front?
So I'm going to call it a good friend of mine. In fact, my first co-founder, a guy called Mark Hayes, based in Cork. And Mark was the technical co-founder, if you like, in my first business. Interestingly enough, in a business that we didn't need a technical person. It was a
Oh,
theatre
okay.
a theatre company. It was a theatre production company. We built scenery and we ran productions for different theatre companies around Ireland. But Mark was the technical brains in that relationship. Uh, I think then over the years, Mark and I would have brainstormed different ideas. We did move forward with one, a marketplace that allowed consumers to. We described it as the reverse of eBay. So consumers
Okay.
could register what they were interested in buying, and then retailers could essentially submit a bid or a quote to that consumer, allowing them to sort of sell off inventory that was maybe not shifting, but do it at a discount because they knew a particular consumer was interested in buying it. So, Mark and I put that idea forward. For me, it was a great idea, but I needed the Marks of the world, the technical guys,
Mm.
to build it. And in that particular case, Mark and I had that long established relationship that we were able to just fall into sync and work together on that scenario. Uh,
Mm.
I think for commercial people, it's probably harder to find a technical co-founder because the temptation is to go and speak to the first technical or maybe the only technical person you know. And James, as a technical person, you will know not all technical people are made the same.
Mm.
And, you could end up bringing on board a technical founder that lacks the skills that that particular idea needs to bring it forward. and therefore the ability to turn that idea into a reality is failing from the very beginning because there's been a mismatch in the skill set of the technical founder.
Yeah.
So I think it's harder from that perspective for a commercial person to find the technical person. But I'm going to lean on you to say, what about the other way around? Is it easier for a technical co-founder or founder to find a commercial or otherwise co-founder?
From my perspective, I would say it's harder because there are less proof points. So, for example, if you're a technical person, a software developer like myself, generally there's a portfolio of work or something that you can point to, or you can talk with some credibility about being a technical person. Now, if you're not technical and somebody tries to bluff their way to technical, I think you can fall over. But from where I am, having been a software developer for over 20 years now, I can spot immediately if somebody is not really a developer, almost instantly, because they'll say something or they won't have that level of knowledge. But where again though you're asking the question, I'm not looking for a technical co-founder, so I wouldn't need to ask somebody those technical questions. When it comes to the commercial side, I would say it's really quite hard because if you're somebody who can bluff, you can easily convince a technical person that you know about sales and or raising money and the commercial side. And only when you actually need to do it do you then realize that somebody can't do it. And I think that is a big challenge and a big worry for technical co-founders because it's easy to get hoodwinked by somebody with great confidence to come in and say, oh yes, I've raised hundreds of millions before. Maybe they did, but they also had a team behind them and they forgot to say that. Or maybe they did sell those massive, 7-8 figure deals, but again, had a team behind them. I mean, certainly in my previous company, Realware, where we both met, there were a number of people at the table who claimed that they could do a number of things, but had in fact come from big companies and couldn't do those things because they were used to having a massive team alongside them to do those things for them. On the technical side, I have two stories, fairly recent actually, to maybe bolster your side of why it's hard to find a technical co-founder. One is somebody I was talking to recently who had built a platform, and the technical co-founder that was chosen knew very well how to work in one particular piece of technology that was appropriate for building the. I'm just kind of speaking around the houses here a bit. They built a platform that was great for the problem the company was trying to solve today, but it wasn't scalable because the technology that this particular technical co-founder was comfortable with was not a scalable platform, but they knew how to build apps with it really, really well. So they effectively built a really good prototype, and it works really well for that very narrow purpose. But this particular technical co-founder has very little expertise on how to scale a tech platform, which basically means that this company's got to rewrite their platform. Not great. The other side, and this is somebody that we both know, in a previous business, started a company with a technical co-founder who made them believe that they could write applications, and in fact their skill was building teams who could write applications. And our mutual friend wasn't technical enough to be able to call the bullshit, and so then started a business with somebody who claimed that they were technical when in fact they were just technical enough to be able to hire a team. Now, look, if you're about to raise $5 million, pounds, whatever, doesn't matter. You need a team. But if you're doing a very small business like Key in Box, where the founders are relying on me, for example, to build the platform, it doesn't work if my only skill is knowing how to build a team of people who can build.
Yes, makes it
build
very
the platform.
difficult to bootstrap that.
Yes, yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think that's when it never really gets off the back of the napkin. So, oh yeah, I mean, choosing your founders, that is definitely a skill in itself, and no one really talks about that when they have the great idea and then the idea has gone to the end. I mean, take a look at. I always use the Facebook example. Mark Zuckerberg, clearly a really smart guy, but I don't think that Facebook will be where it is if it wasn't for Sheryl Sandberg, who sat next to him for years and years and helped him grow the business. Could Zuckerberg have grown Facebook into what it is today? I, 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 I don't
100%
think
no.
so. I mean, everyone thinks of Bill Gates with Microsoft, but Bill had Paul Allen, and
Yeah. The ideas,
Jobs
man.
had Wozniak, and there's you hear about let's call them the tentpole founder a lot, but you just can't do it yourself. I think there's very, very few businesses, few great ideas that turned into companies that didn't have a team of clearly excellent people. And you and I have heard it recently while trying to look at investment for a number of things. The quality of the founders is actually something that investors now look for.
Yeah.
Not
More
only
so than
is
the idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Is the idea investable? Important. But to the investor, if the team can't either work together and bring that idea to market, then you're just throwing your money away.
Yeah, I'm struggling to remember the name of the business now. Maybe I'll remember for the next next session. But I was listening to a guy sharing his experience where he'd gone with an idea to one of these it could have been Y Combinator or something like that, and he'd pitched his idea and got rejected. It was not an investable idea. It was not going to be suitable for Y Combinator, whatever the program was. But he got a call to say, look, we're not interested in your idea, but we are interested in you.
Mm.
So why don't you come back in, start into the program and see if we can find out what the idea is that you have hidden inside you. And whatever that idea was, I'll see if I can dig it out and find out what it was. But it is now a multi-billion-dollar business,
Oh, good.
because they were investing in the founder and getting the team right at the beginning when you go into that initial investment or seed round is important because you talk there about Facebook and Mark and Cheryl. I was listening. Sorry, it was an audiobook I was listening to called Second in Command. Great audiobook if you have a chance to
I'll,
listen to it.
I'll look for it now. Yep.
Yeah. But they talk about making sure when you're bringing your COO, your chief operating officer in as your second in command, that you have complementary skill sets.
Mm.
So that if, for example, if your COO is very extroverted and, wants to go out there and speak to the people, then you don't need a COO to be that same personality.
Mm.
And likewise, if the COO is into the finance and the numbers and, the project planning, but then you need a COO that's more on the technical and execution of the side of things. So, it is equally as important on the founders when you're building out your founding team that bringing on board two technical founders is great if you're a software development business and you're selling that software solution. But if you're looking to sell something into the market as a product, well, if you're going to an investment round and as the founders, you've got two technical people, but no commercial or marketing or finance or anything like that, you're going to struggle. So making sure you have the whole business layout covered to a certain extent from your founder team is really important.
So you've got a great idea. You've managed to get your team together of all the different skill sets needed to bring an idea to market. Something that no one really talks about, but is very key, is timing.
Huh.
when I first started the world of work, and I left university, my first job was with a company making a digital photo frame. Now we're going back 20 years now, and this photo frame was Wi-Fi connected, and it was aligned with Microsoft, and the goal was that lots of people had photos all on their PC that they'd taken from holidays or whatever, baby pictures. How do you get those photos off the PC somewhere in the home? And a digital photo frame using Wi-Fi was going to grab those photos. Great, good idea. 20 years ago, though, not everyone had Wi-Fi. Not everyone had a PC capable of doing that, and or the technical expertise in actually setting up a product like that. And unfortunately, we didn't sell many units, and I was made redundant from that job. In fact, that helped me start my first business. So that was, on balance, that was probably a good thing. I would say, though, that that idea was known as an idea that was too early. So what do you think about, timing?
So I think there's timing on two sides of the conversation. There's timing on the idea and taking it forward into an opportunity, and then there's the opportunity within the business. And I spoke earlier about my store analytics. Great idea for the metrics that it had available at the time, but not a scalable business because of the time we created that business in. As say, with the advent of AI stuff now, it would absolutely have been a fantastic business now. That is not an idea. We will not be teasing this idea out in future episodes. The reality is that the technology we used is just a commodity piece of all other Wi-Fi solutions out there now today. But if we think about key and box, if you had come to me 3 years ago with the idea for key and box, it probably wouldn't have resonated with me as much as it did this time. The timing was perfect for you to put the idea forward because I was in that situation where I was sharing sensitive data with my professional services companies, my legal and state agent or mortgage brokers. So it wouldn't have resonated with me much at the time. But was it still a good idea 3 years ago? Absolutely was. Would it have moved forward? Would we have had customers adopting key and box 3 years ago? Probably not as much as today, because let's face it, cybercrime was not as big 3 years ago. It was still fairly big, but it is not as big as it is today. The amount of small to medium-sized firms that are being targeted by cybercrime is constantly increasing. Therefore, the need for a service like Key in Box is much more prevalent in today's market. Therefore, its ability to sell, its ability to reach and resonate with customers, the timing is perfect. And of course, there's so much AI built into it that, thank you, James, would it have worked as well as a product without the AI? Possibly, but I think with the advent of AI, it's made it much more easy for professional services firms to deploy it. So timing is perfect there, I think, on the key and box business.
But there's timing, though, for a number of things. Like you've just described a number of timing aspects. There's timing for you as an incoming founder. Is it the right time for you? Then there's timing for the tech. If it's a tech business that you're building, does the tech actually exist today to make the most of the idea that you've got? I mean, you mentioned Key in Box. Key in Box would exist without AI, but it would be harder to use. And because the core cryptography side, this is not a podcast about Key in Box, but the core cryptography of Key in Box has been around forever. but it doesn't mean that it's widely available because people find it too hard to use. I think AI has made that easy to use. But then there's the third aspect of the timing of, is the market actually ready for this idea? And I go back to the photo frame idea. The founders, it was clearly ready. I wasn't a founder of that business. It was my first job out of university, but the founders were clearly ready for that business because they all got together and did it. Great. And we actually got a product and it was in the shops. So great. The technology was nearly there, if not there, because it did actually connect to your PC and pull photos from there, and it connected to your home Wi-Fi, and it did that really well. But the third one, the market, no, Wi-Fi was still really new. Not many people had enough PCs out there of the right caliber to be able to do that. And so that third aspect of timing. So, we've gone through, like, ideas are cheap at the beginning, and why do most ideas fail, to finding the right co-founders, to now you've got this third one that you have to get right. You've got three timing aspects. You've got to get the right founders and they're ready. You've got to get the right tech and the world is ready for that tech. And then the market actually has to take the timing for that and agree that it's now's the right time for that thing. I mean, how many ideas have disappeared? Good ideas. Because
$1 billion ideas.
Because the market wasn't ready for them. I mean, maybe the fact the market wasn't ready for them means they're not actually good ideas to begin with. I mean,
so with that in mind, do you have a suggestion? If a founder is out there mulling over an idea, where do they start in terms of looking at, is the timing right? Where's the magic answer?
yeah, my answer today is different to what it was a year ago, and you know where I'm going with this. Just ask ChatGPT. Just ask ChatGPT. I mean, any idea that you've got for anything, we've both done it for Keybox and for other projects as well. ChatGPT has. I think we need to do a full, almost like walkthrough of an idea on ChatGPT, because that's a future episode.
Oh, that would be good.
ChatGPT has a great mode. It's relatively new, as in terms of a few months, as we're recording this, called Deep Research. I know it's a feature that you've used a lot. I've used it a lot.
Used it this morning.
I'd like to take credit for introducing you to that feature.
You did, yeah.
But I didn't build it, so who cares? Deep Research basically allows ChatGPT to really spend time thinking about the question that you ask it and going and doing its own research. Yes, you can sit on to Google and search for 100 different websites yourself, but you've also then got to read them and then digest and then make decisions. So if you were to say to ChatGPT's Deep Research, I have an idea for this business, is it the right time? Is the technology available to do this? Does the market even want this? And ask it all those kind of questions. Is there any competition out there that already does this that either prohibits me from going after this idea, or I can join them in the competitive landscape? Because competition doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Sometimes competition means that it makes everybody elevate in a much better way. Deep Research will then spend somewhere between 5 and 20 minutes. It depends on the complexity of the question. And it will figure it out for you. In fact, I used it this weekend. I was struggling with it, not for an idea for a business, but I was struggling with a technical problem. And I thought, there must be a better way of doing this. So I just typed in my problem to Deep Research. And 10 minutes later, there was something I just hadn't even considered. So, that's what I would do today. If you're not sure about timing, ask ChatGPT. And it may not be right, but it will give you a data point that you can then make a decision on.
Yeah, for certain. And, there's so many of those problems or conundrums that ChatGPT and many of the other AI engines can support and give you the information. Just be careful, because these AI bots are very much positive and on your side. So if you give it an idea, it's going to tell you it's a great idea, and it's going to then give you a few things to consider. That does not mean it's actually a good idea. So frame the prompt correctly, so that you get the right information, and then with everything to do with AI, do your own research then as well. Take the
Yeah, yeah,
information
yeah.
and do your own research.
I don't know if you found, but on deep research, it will give you the sources,
Yeah,
and
brilliant.
I will then go and look through
Yeah,
those pages, because I think what it does really well is you'll give it its initial prompt and it'll just do a quick search of the internet. I'm going to say it Googles, but I'm sure it doesn't use Google. It uses a quick search of the internet and it finds the first page, and then it uses the information from that first page to then go and look for the next one, the next one, the next one. That is something that anybody could do themselves. It would just take significantly long. That would be a whole like week's worth of researching time or whatever. But yes, absolutely do your own research. Deep research or ChatGPT is one data point. I think maybe a good way of framing it is it gives you more things to think about.
correct.
It doesn't make a decision for you. It gives you more things to think about so you can then do what humans do best. And then, because look, ChatGPT, one big fallacy of AI that people think it does is it's not inventing anything. That's what humans do. What it's doing is either validating an idea or just finding maybe pitfalls for it. But to your point on the prompt, I have to tell it regularly, don't just agree with me.
Yeah.
Tell me. In fact, in my personality that I've customized for ChatGPT, I've told it not to agree with me all the time. Because, yeah, ChatGPT, if you to tell it anything and saying, today I feel like I want to follow a particular religion, what do you think? ChatGPT will tell you it's a great idea. Absolutely brilliant. The best thing in the world. And if you were to say to it in the next sentence, no, actually, I've changed my mind and I want to go down a different religion, it will agree with you as well and think it's the best idea that you've ever had. So you do need to,
You need to be cautious.
you do. But, back to the segment of timing, how do you solve that? I would say today, ask ChatGPT. A few years ago, I don't know what you would have done. Just lots of Googling.
Yeah.
But
So on this, in the similar vein of timing, right? One of the things that we're seeing out there in the marketplace, everywhere you look, is AI startups. Every startup out there under the sun right now is calling themselves out as AI enabled, AI this, AI that.
Yep.
What if you have an idea and there is that temptation that you need to figure out, how do I get AI into my idea? You're the tech guy. Is that an appropriate response? Figure out how do I make this idea AI friendly so that anybody looking to invest in my new startup goes, as an AI startup, I want to get involved. Or is there that temptation to go, AI has no business in this idea. You obviously have no idea about AI, therefore I'm not investing. It's that challenge.
I mean, it depends on who your audience is. Do you need AI today to raise money? You don't need AI today, but it helps to have AI today to raise money. Absolutely. Do you need AI to sell your product to a customer? I would say less so. So what you just said is, your idea is AI, therefore I want to get involved with that. Getting involved with that phrasing, that's an investable phrase. Getting involved with. No customer says, I want to get involved with a product. They want to buy a product. So, yes, I think today, if you want to make your life a bit easier, yes, you need AI in your software product. If you need to raise money, it's easier if your technology product has an AI component, because investors follow trends. Investors are always looking to make sure they're not missing out on things. That's generally where trends come from. For every investor that missed out on OpenAI, there's 1,000 investors. Sorry, every investor who took OpenAI, there's 1,000 who missed out on OpenAI, and those are looking for the next startup, because who doesn't want to be an investor in OpenAI of 5 years ago? That's it. Now, but does your product actually need AI? No, probably not. But if you need to raise money, then you should at least have an AI angle, or you're just going to be setting up for like a difficult time. I mean, if you're speaking from experience here, if you're a hardware, let's take AI out of the way. If you're a hardware company trying to raise capital from Silicon Valley, that's difficult because you're going to a bunch of software investors with a hardware product. I think it's the same kind of concept, really. If you're a non-AI software company talking to a bunch of AI investors, because they're all AI investors now, then it doesn't mean it's not possible to do. And I'm sure the best ideas are still going to find their way through because the right investor will notice the team and the timing and whether or not the idea is marketable and all of that. But still, I think it's probably going to be harder to get at least that initial meeting, probably. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I certainly feel there's another episode that we could dive into the whole AI conversation a lot more. You know, I'm relatively new to the whole AI ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I am very much limited to ChatGPT and asking it questions and getting the information back and being able to manage my travel itinerary properly and get good recommendations on places for brunch and, you know, looking at the tech stack for, different CRM modules and things like that, really good at from a ChatGPT perspective. But that's only scratching the surface of what, in fact, it probably doesn't even scratch the surface of what AI can do for a business. And I'm not even going to pretend that I even understand what it is it can do. You know, I see what you've put together in Key and Box, and it still baffles me as to how you do it. But also, as like most things when it comes to software, I just scratch my head and go, I don't know how that works. But but the fact that you brought it in and it made the customer experience so much better and powerful is a credit to you. But I think many of our listeners would be interested in understanding where can AI fit in? What are the different things that AI can do? And then they can start to understand how it may or may not fit into their business.
I think Key and Box, we've added a sprinkling of AI. It's not fully AI. We've added AI where I think it makes sense today. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, we could have put AI in 100 different places inside Key and Box, but it probably wouldn't have made sense. It would have just been, square peg in a round hole. I think that if it didn't make sense in the place that we've put it in, then we wouldn't have done it anyway. And I would say with some products, you just need to figure out, well, maybe one good way of looking at it is which parts are your users spending time and seeing if you can automate those. So the part of Key and Box that we put AI in was when it has to write a message to a customer, and it will write that message for you, but you can still edit it if you don't like the one that was made. That is a huge time-saving feature of Key and Box, and I think AI really fits there. But it probably wouldn't fit in too many other places. And I think timing. Back to the segment, timing and AI. I guess they are really related because if you're not AI today, then you're maybe in the wrong market time, or it doesn't mean that it's going to fail. You've just given yourself a lot more work to do to try and prove to the market that now is the right time for a non-AI tool that you're bringing out. So, we've talked a lot about why ideas have failed or the complexity of bringing an idea to market. But what makes a good idea? One way of summarizing it is the only good ideas are the ones that you actually manage to execute on. What do you think about that?
I'm going to challenge that assumption.
Okay.
The only ideas...
And you wrote the script, so go on then. You're challenging with yourself.
The only ideas are the ones that you execute.
Yeah.
Well, is there not success from failures? I know
Okay.
I've had that experience. I've
Mhm.
I've benefited personally more from my failures than my successes.
Mm.
So is this a suitable discussion point for next week? Do we look at how do startup founders deal with failure? You know, is it better? I mentioned it earlier to be stubbornly determined and drive through an idea that is never going to succeed, and or when do you pull the plug on an idea, and how does society and our markets view startups that don't succeed?
Interesting. Yeah, because I think that's actually a cultural thing. Just on the last point that you said, in the US, having a failed startup is a badge of honor.
Hmm.
And I think in the, let's call it the Western European world, which you and I live in, it's not. It's shame. Having a business that failed is shameful. And I I agree that maybe next week's episode should be titled "Success from Failure." Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot to unpack there because if I think about that photo frame company where I was 21, I was made redundant from that business. If it wasn't for the failure of that idea or that business, I wouldn't have started my consultancy company, which
Hmm.
actually is what kickstarted my career, properly, if you will. So if it wasn't for that failure, I would probably still be a software developer in a, not that there's anything wrong with this, but in a big room full of lots of other software developers cranking out code for some corporation, which I've never done. So interesting.
I can't imagine that room full of other software engineers enjoying it as much. I think
Yeah,
you
that's
are a
okay.
lone wolf.
No, of course, of course, of course. Okay, well, look, I think we should probably put a pin in that because that is an episode on itself. This has been a really great discussion. I mean, ideas are cheap. Everybody can turn around with a napkin and say, "I've got a great idea to revolutionize blah blah blah." But if you haven't got the right founders, if the market conditions aren't right, if the tech isn't there to build it, or if your founders aren't in the right headspace at the time, or if you haven't got enough personal capital to be able to see it, or you can't convince an investor. I mean, there's so many ifs, buts, and maybes that go from that napkin to a business that actually turns a profit. I think that's probably why ideas are cheap. Ideas are great, but ideas are cheap. So maybe my message to all three of our listeners is if somebody asks you to sign an NDA for an idea, question the idea, maybe.
Correct. But and I suppose, ideas are cheap. I've been in Dubai less than 48 hours,
Yeah,
and yet I've two or three ideas
yeah.
that are going to now sit in the back of my mind and sort of germinate and see something might come of some of them. But, always keep your eyes open because there are ideas everywhere, right? And just you got to be open to taking that idea and nurturing it and teasing it out and seeing is there an actual business in this idea?
Well, that's really interesting. Now, you may not be comfortable doing this, but we're going to meet on Friday morning for
Yeah.
breakfast. I think. It's for the listener. It is currently Monday morning, so why don't we talk on Friday about these ideas? And if we're comfortable, and they're your ideas, so if you're comfortable, maybe we do an episode on the ideas that you had whilst in Dubai
Yeah.
and how they might become a bit of a thought exercise. How, because you've only got so much time, maybe you haven't got time to take these ideas to market.
Yeah.
Maybe that might be a really good episode where how do we have this thought exercise of how do we take an idea to market, considering both the commercial aspects and the technical aspects,
Yeah.
and how
Let's
you
do that.
might raise money on those. That could be a really good experiment. Um, I think we've talked about ideas are cheap enough. Cheap doesn't mean they're bad. Cheap just
No,
means that there's a lot more to running a business than having a great idea. Um, Thank
very much
you,
so.
Owen, for another excellent conversation.
Yeah.
Just a bit behind the scenes. This, for the listener, is actually episode 3. We re-recorded this episode. This is the second attempt at recording this episode because my microphone quality was absolutely awful the first time. I think, though, the second time's the charm, and this recording, especially also the backdrop on your side, was much better.
It is
So
awesome.
we've got the glamour side in. So next week's episode, it was going to be something else, but I think actually now, next week's episode should be success from failure. So
Yep.
let's look at that. Thank you, Owen, for
Thank you,
recording
James.
this with me. It's been awesome. To our listener, by the time we actually get this published, which I'm not too sure when that will be, but when we get this published, we will be on Spotify, YouTube, all those kind of places. Please like, subscribe, and until next time, you've been listening to The Long Shortcut.
Thank you very much.